Amazing. So welcome everyone to PowerBI4Enviro's. This is our monthly meetup group where we aim to share different case studies from across the environmental industry using Power BI, but also provide a forum to learn new tips and tricks and empower other Enviros on their Power BI journey. So just a bit of housekeeping before we kick off. If you're not talking, please just make sure that you put yourself on mute just so we don't hear any of that background noise. If you have questions, type the questions in the chat. We'll try to answer them maybe all together at the end of the presentation. Or James, would you like, if there's a block of questions, would you like me to moderate and ask them going?
Let's see how we go. But yeah, I don't mind being interrupted or whatever. But yeah, if you want to moderate it, that's great.
Amazing. Cool. And just a reminder that this session is being recorded, so we'll share it on our YouTube channel and through the meetup group as well. And a bit of a Teams tip. Everyone probably knows this already, but you can zoom in on the content by pressing Control and scrolling. Before we dive in, I'll just give an acknowledgement of country. So we would like to acknowledge the Bidlaman people as the traditional owners of the land on which Christian and I are dialing in from today, and pay our respects to the Whadjuk people and the elders, both past and present, and also pay respect to the traditional owners of the lands on which everyone is dialing in from as well across the globe today. A quick shout out to our event sponsors. I always smile at this because it's Discover AI. At Discover AI, we specialize in Power BI for the environmental and water industries. We provide Power BI training, report design, end-to-end Power BI reporting. We also do infographics, animations, and general environmental analytics as well. But today, the session everyone's dialed in for is the amazing James Dales talking about the next generation of maps for Power BI with Icon Map Pro. And for this group especially, I think this is a really interesting and relevant topic because as we're aware, most environmental studies need a map, and the map's often the hero visual of lots of our Power BI reports. So I'm super interested to hear what James has to say today. So just a quick overview of the session summary. So James will look at how to achieve some of the more advanced mapping requirements in Power BI. The new Icon Map Pro visual opens up more opportunities for creating more complex geospatial visuals. So, for example, working with your own polygons to create choropleth maps, drawing lines, shapes, images, to create interactivity or interactive utility network diagrams, and cluster data using the H3 hexagon grid system. So a little bit about James, our speaker today. So James, having previously led the Power BI and Microsoft Fabric capabilities at both the UK and at a global level for a large multinational Microsoft consultancy, James has recently established a new ambitious data company called Tenet. How do we pronounce it?
It's Decantis.
Decantis. Sorry. I'm terrible at pronouncing words. Enabling him to focus on geospatial analytics and data products. James is a Microsoft Data Platform MVP, co-leader of the London Fabric and Power BI user group, and in 2019 became the first member of the Power BI Contributors Program, working alongside the Microsoft engineering team to build new functionality into the Power BI product code base. So he has a keen interest in geospatial and real-time analytics and is the author of Icon Map and the Icon Map Pro custom visuals. Oh, so good to have you here today, James, and just a big thank you. We're big users of your freely available Icon Map visual. It's amazing, and I can't wait to see what the new visual can do. So I'm going to stop sharing now. If you're happy to take over.
Yeah, let me share my screen. Thanks, Alice. Let's bring Teams back up on my other screen so I can keep an eye on the chat as well in case there's any questions. I'll do my best to try and keep a track, but yeah, Alice, if you don't mind moderating and shouting them out if necessary, that'd be great. Thanks. So yeah, well, as I say, thanks very much for inviting me to present. Really excited to be here and massive admirer of what you do at Discovery AI, and your amazing visuals. They're fantastic. So great to see. Great to see if Icon Map Pro is going to be useful to you as well. But I don't need to do much of an introduction because I think you've done a pretty thorough job introducing me. So let's get straight into it and use as much of the time as possible. I think if I was going to run through every feature we've got in the new visual, we'll probably need 2 or 3 hours. So I'll try and pick the key ones. So what am I going to go through? So I just want to very quickly cover current state of mapping in the core visuals in Power BI, and then talk a bit about the more advanced use cases that we might want to be able to produce in Power BI, and then I'll spend the majority of the time basically demoing Icon Map Pro. How long have I got, Alice? Is it 45 minutes-ish?
Yeah, about 45 minutes. We're saving a little bit of time at the end, maybe for general Q&A. But yeah, we've got nothing at the end except for an intro into our next session. So happy for you to use up, that 45 minutes.
Brilliant. Okay. Right, well, let's then talk about those core visuals. So up until this month, if you open Power BI Desktop, we had the choice of 5 built-in visuals in Power BI. Obviously, I'm sure this audience is no stranger to the fact that we've had shape map in there for drawing custom polygons that is still in preview, will never come out of preview, has been in preview for 7 or 8 years now. What's changed interestingly in the June release of Power BI Desktop is that I noticed the map and field map now also don't display by default, and you have to go into Power BI security settings and flick a little switch and turn them back on if you want them. So those first 3 now have pretty much gone from the product. The reason being is Microsoft announced a couple of years ago that they were going to build the functionality that was in those first 3 visuals into the Azure Maps visual. Part of the reason for that is certainly the field map and the old map were built on Bing Maps API, of course, which has all been deprecated, and Microsoft have moved over to the much newer, more capable Azure Maps platform. And now a lot of the functionality, or to be fair, most of the functionality, if not all that was in the original Bing Map visual and the field map visual, has now arrived in Azure Maps. But obviously there's still a big gap between that old functionality and what we want to be able to do in our maps. So I'll talk about that in a moment. And then, of course, we've got the other map visual, the ArcGIS Maps visual, which is interesting. It's interesting because if you look under the covers, it's actually a custom visual. It's not developed by Microsoft. It's developed by specialist mapping company Esri. And they've obviously had an agreement with Microsoft to ship it as part of the core product, but underneath it's treated pretty much as a custom visual. Now, I haven't got time in 45 minutes to demo both the pros and cons of both of those visuals, so I'll talk a bit about the reasons that we might need more functionality as we go through, but some of that additional functionality is things like what happens if we want to build a choropleth map. So a choropleth map's like a thematic map with boundaries or polygons or shapes on the map, and we color those shapes based on the values in our data, either through different color intensities or different colors. And you can do this with both Azure Maps and the Esri Maps, but you're limited to the built-in geographies that those maps understand. If you want to use your own custom shapes, then you can't currently do that with the Azure Maps visual, and it's it's not exactly straightforward to achieve with the Esri visual. Other things we might want to do is implement drill down in our maps. Perhaps we want one layer of choropleth map and then click on a region and view more detail underneath. Or perhaps we don't want to use Azure Maps background mapping or Esri mapping. Perhaps we've got our own bespoke maps in our organization. Perhaps we're running our own GeoServer, or we want to use Mapbox maps. And perhaps we want to cluster our data in other ways. Perhaps we might want to use Uber's H3 hexagons. Perhaps we just want to put some images, icons or symbols on the map. And maybe we want to combine all of the above into a single map so that we're overlaying, I don't know, locations of assets on top of population demographics. Perhaps we want to create infrastructure or network maps. Perhaps we're a utility company, a water company that wants to display its network of pipes and maybe change the widths on the flow of water through each of those pipes, or maybe overlay KPIs, representing the condition of those pipes, whether they're leaking, whether they need replacing. Or maybe we just want to track assets. Maybe we've got a fleet of vehicles that we want to be able to, place them on the map, see where they've been, see where they're going, that kind of thing. So all of these different use cases are examples of where we might need to go beyond the capabilities of those core visuals. Now, we're really lucky in Power BI that we have this concept of what used to be called custom visuals, but basically visuals that have been created by third-party companies or individuals sometimes to enable that more bespoke or additional functionality that you can't do in a core product. Now, in terms of mapping, actually, there's now a huge choice of custom visuals available for maps. I think there's probably over 20, either in App Source and beyond. Now, one of the most popular ones of those was a visual that I created 6 or 7 years ago called Icon Map, and that I know a lot of you are familiar with. But Icon Map has become a little bit of a victim of its own success. I think it's fair to say that I've been overwhelmed by the amount of support cases that I get every day, sometimes 10 or 15 emails, and I could easily spend 8 hours just responding to people's questions on a daily basis. And of course, I had to do that on top of a full-time job. Icon Map was something that I did in my free time. And it got to the stage that it's become completely unsustainable. And as a result of that, I haven't been able to respond to the majority of support requests I was getting. And also it was leaving no time to further develop the visual and build new features. So we needed to do something about it. And Icon Map Pro is the answer to that. So I left the full-time consulting job that I've been doing for the last 20 or so years and started a new company with my business partner, Bryn, to focus on geospatial analytics on the Microsoft platform. First step, which is Icon Map Pro, but we've got plans to do all sorts going forwards. So let me jump out of PowerPoint and I'll give you a bit of a demo of Icon Map Pro. So I'm going to use actually the latest version of Icon Map Pro. So as I mentioned, it started going live in Power BI yesterday. And looking at the comments, it sounds like it may not have arrived in some Australia regions just yet, but hopefully it will be soon. But you should now be able to find it in here. You can see there's the old Icon Map there, and then we've got Icon Map Pro in here. And it should just be a case of taking add and putting it to your report. It is a commercial visual. I'll touch on that a little bit later. Obviously, by making Tacantis and Icon Map Pro a day job, obviously at some point we need to get paid. So when you're ready to buy it, there's the buy now option in there. Now, I also submitted an update to AppSource yesterday, a couple of days ago perhaps, with a newer version, some improvements. So I'm actually going to use that. Hopefully that'll start arriving in the next week or so. Let's add it onto the report canvas. Now, I'm using unlicensed version, so I haven't paid for it. In the version that will go live imminently, it displays this yellow message, but you're able to close it just by clicking close, and then you've got all of the full capabilities of the visual to try out, you know, and be satisfied that it's able to do what you want. So I'm going to use some open data to build some maps. It's really simple data. It's actually from data.police.uk, and it's crime data for the whole of England. So I basically picked a month, I think it's probably March last year, and downloaded all of the crime data for every single police force in England. So in my data set, I've got a row representing an individual crime that has occurred. And you can see here there's just over 500,000 rows of data, so just over 500,000 crimes occurred in England in March last year. And then I've got the longitude and latitude, location, which doesn't really help us, it's just a text vague description of describing that location. And then I've got something called the lower super output area code. This is a statistical region in the UK, so it's much smaller than a local authority area, but bigger than a postcode area, if that makes sense. And then I've got a column called crime count. This is just filled with number ones because one row represents one crime, and it just gives me a really quick way of aggregating up the number of crimes, either in a particular location or of a particular type, for example. Just because I'm lazy and don't like writing DAX and demos. And then I've also created this landlocked combined field. And this is a bit of a tip when working both with old and new icon map, is that you need a unique ID that represents the item that you're putting on the map. So if you combine the long and lat fields into an individual text field, it gives you a unique ID representing a location on the map. So you can see here that we've got multiple rows at this location. So I know that we've had this many crimes at that particular place. And then I've simply joined that to another table called geography, and this is just a geographic hierarchy, and moving up from that lower super output area up to local authority, and then into region and country and so on. And then they're just simply joined together on that LSOA field. Okay, so that's the data. Let's have a look at adding it to the map. So pull in that landlocked combined field into ID, and then you see we get background maps. Now, before I do anything else, it's probably worth me just touching on the background maps, because this is one of the reasons that we've built Icon Map Pro. So in the old Icon Map, you had two options for background mapping without going to custom providers. You had OpenStreetMap data. Excuse me. We had OpenStreetMap maps provided by OpenStreetMap servers, and we had Mapbox. Mapbox requires you to put in an API key, and then the OpenStreetMap backgrounds were free. But the problem with using those background layers is that to be compliant with the usage requirements for OpenStreetMap servers, they weren't supposed to be used for, large-scale production purposes. So obviously, as Icon Map has become more popular, it's adding more and more load onto those servers, and is, probably close to the limits of what's allowed under their usage terms. Certainly, if somebody deploys it to tens of thousands of users and their customers and uses OpenStreetMap backgrounds, then that's probably not allowed under those terms of usage. So what we've done for Icon Map Pro is we've created our own background mapping tile service. So if you go into choose your background layer in Icon Map Pro, you'll notice that the default option is Icon Map. So we've got our own vector tile service here driving all of these background maps. Zoom back in again. And the advantage of having vector tiles is that we can very easily create different styles of background maps, all built off those same map tiles. so on. You get the idea. But you don't just have to use our icon map. Now, obviously, we've still got support in there for Mapbox. I'll come to that in a moment, but we also support with a API key, Azure Maps, ArcGIS Online Maps, Mesri, Google Maps, MapTiler, Ordnance Survey from the UK, and then you can continue to use your own custom raster tiles, but now also vector tiles and WMS servers for your background maps. So I don't know if you wanted to use Google Maps, and then I know Google Maps in most countries has really good satellite imagery, for example, so there's no reason why you can't use that now as a background in Icon Map Pro. Or Mapbox. Mapbox is drastically improved beyond the old Icon Map functionality. So we've got support for the old raster tiles that we had in Icon Map, but also support vector tiles as well. And I know a lot of people were using Mapbox Studio to create their own custom map backgrounds. So here's a hideous one that I created just to show that it is very clearly a custom one with this purple water. And if we want to use this in Icon Map Pro, then we can just go to Mapbox Studio's share option. I can paste the style URL here. And in here, choose Mapbox Studio and paste in that URL. And straight away, we've got the Mapbox Studio there appearing here in Icon Map Pro. So that's super easy to use custom styled maps now in Icon Map Pro. So let's jump back to our crime data and start adding the data onto the map. So we've got longitude and latitude, so let's drag that on. So latitude and longitude. And I'm going to start with circles, so we'll drag crime count onto circle size. And instantly we get circles. Now, you can see that we've started drawing circles and then stopped. So let me explain that a little bit. Let me add on a slicer, and I'm just going to use that hierarchy to limit it to London. Now, in most visuals in Power BI have a limit of 30,000 rows of data that they can plot at any one time. So what's happened here, Icon Map Pro is no exception to that default. Started plotting the data here, and then moving across, we've got this kind of vertical line here where we've got to 30,000 circles that it's plotted on the map and then stopped. So one of the things that we can do in Icon Map Pro is increase those number of rows. So I can increase, we can increase in 30,000 increments up to 180,000. Now, it doesn't mean that we can put 180,000 circles on the map without it potentially slowing down somewhat. But with some of the items like H3 hexagons that I'll show in a moment, we can happily display 180,000 of them on the map. So you just need to be careful of the compromise between rows of data and performance. But you can see here now, increasing that to 60,000, that we've finished drawing the boundary of London, and actually these two really large points over Heathrow Airport, representing a large amount of crime, are now visible on our map. So we're not missing any of the data. So hopefully that will help, a lot of the mapping scenarios where you've got more than 30,000 rows of data. Also, I'm not going to go through all of the different options. You'll notice, there's a huge amount of configuration options and formatting options, all supporting conditional formatting. So you can, you can configure it as much as necessary. A couple of things to point out. Clustering is new. That wasn't in the old Icon Map. And I think it's a better implementation potentially than is in Azure Maps, where everything just appears as a slightly larger blue circle with a number in it. So instead of drawing all 30-odd thousand points now, we're clustering up, and we've got different colours of the circles representing the smaller, medium and larger amounts of data underneath. And as we mouse over, so this point here over Westminster in London, you can see that we've got 1,676 crimes, and it also shows a polygon detailing the area where those points are underneath. And I can either click on there, or I can just scroll in and out with the mouse and eventually get down to those individual points. So hopefully that will be an improvement on the old circle functionality. So let's turn circles off a moment, and I'll remove the circle size on there, and it's probably just worth turning that on briefly. So heat maps are now available in Icon Map Pro. I'm not going to go into those in too much detail. Instead, let's drag crime count onto H3 weight and add on H3 level. Yeah. Now you'll notice actually, as I'm turning these different layers on and off, you'll see this is a big change from the old icon map. Each of the different data layers has got its own set of formatting and configuration options. So if you wanted to have circles and polygons, for example, in the old icon map, you ended up having to create some pretty nasty DAX switch statements, depending on the type of object, to be able to conditionally format them. But now they're all individual formatting settings. You can just specify the options in here, and it will only relate to that type of option on the map. So let's configure this a little bit nicer. So H3 basically divides the globe up into hexagons of different resolutions. So the smaller the number, the bigger the hexagon. So let's increase it to something, let's try 7. And we'll just tweak the formatting on these a little bit. Let's start with, I don't know, let's go through blue through to red. Maybe let's go one level higher. And you can see you can change the resolution with conditional formatting as well. So you could have a little draggy slicer bar to change the resolution, or if you are filtering like I've got here with different regions or maybe local authorities, depending on the detail that you're currently slicing the map to, you could have a different resolution depending on how much area you're looking at a time. So that's aggregating the data into H3 hexagons. Also, I'll show an example of this a little bit later. So this is generating those hexagons based on the number of, in this case, crimes based on the longitudes and latitudes under each hexagon. It's basically clustering that data. Now you can do up to 180,000 rows, so 180,000 locations to cluster up within the visual using longitudes and latitudes. But if you want to do this over really, really, really large amounts of data, like hundreds of millions or billions of rows of data, then you need to pre-process it using something like Databricks' Mosaic, for example, or even just do it in QGIS and spit out results. That will give you a H3 ID. So also support those instead of aggregating the data within the visual, and then pass in the H3 IDs and a value, and it will plot those hexagons on the map. And the benefit of that is you can then pre-process crazy amounts of data and display up to 180,000 hexagons on the map. So I'll show that in a few minutes. But I guess the most popular use case for both the old icon map and hopefully the new icon map is to be able to draw custom polygons. And we've got quite a few ways of achieving this. But I'm going to start with the one that was really missing in the old icon map, and I hope will be hugely useful to everybody. So I'm going to create a choropleth map of, let's do the whole of England, England's local authorities. So I'm going to drag in the local authority code into the ID field. And then if you've used the ArcGIS visual, it's got this join field that basically is a field that you use to join the properties in your polygons to the data in your Power BI model. And we've got this now in Icon Map Pro. So I'm going to drag the same field into this feature reference. So then when we bring our shapes in, it knows that it's going to look in this field here to try and join it to the properties in our shapefile. Now in old Icon Map, if you wanted to use a Esri shapefile, it was massively painful. So first of all, you had to download your shapefile from your source, and then the Esri shapefiles are generally quite complex, so you end up loading it into a third-party tool like mapshaper.org or maybe into QGIS, and then simplifying and reducing the number of points on it so that it isn't too big that it breaks the visual. And quite often, if you're working with open polygons, they're not in longitudes and latitudes. They're in the UK, for example, British National Grid, or in a local coordinate system. So you have to change the coordinate system to be longitudes and latitudes. All had to be done in third-party tools. And then in old Icon Map, you had to find somewhere to host that polygon externally as a GeoJSON file. And it was just an extremely painful process. And of course, it relied on you hosting the polygon on a public-facing website with cores enabled, and that just caused a whole amount of confusion and pain. So I've tried to make it super easy. So I'm going to add in a Esri shapefile from a file. Now we've still got the option to pull it in from a URL, but I've also added the ability to upload a local file. Now, unfortunately, Microsoft don't give us the ability to have a file upload button in custom visuals, so I've had to do a bit of a workaround. So if you want to upload a local file, you hit this little toggle here and it displays this button on the left. So I click that, it then gives us a file upload dialog. Now, these are files that I've downloaded from the UK's Office for National Statistics. They're in British National Grid format, and it's pretty big as well. But I'm just going to select that in, and then Icon Map Pro is going to convert it to longitudes and latitudes and automatically simplify it down to a sensible level for us. You'll notice that we've now got all of the UK local authority boundaries displayed on the map. Now, some are grey and some are blue. Now, the reason for that is the ones that are blue are in England, and our crime data only covered England. So these are the ones that have matched with our Power BI data set on that local authority code field. And the ones in grey are the ones that it didn't find data for. Now, if I go into the configuration options, you'll see that we have got option in here to either format those unmatched shapes, so I could change the color, the transparency, or I can completely remove them. So I can remove the unmatched shapes here. So now we've just got the England local authorities. And if I want to create that choropleth map, it should be really straightforward for me to do. I can just go into the conditional formatting. Let's base it on a gradient based on crime count. We'll go from white to blue. Let's also change the outline color. And we very quickly got a choropleth map built on our own bespoke polygons. So that's a big improvement. Obviously, it's all filterable and interactive. I just want to have a look at London.
James, we just got a question in the chat from Anthony. Will support for GeoParquet be added to the Icon Map Pro in the future?
Oh, good question. It's on the backlog. That doesn't mean it's definitely going to be supported. I need to understand how we do this, because I mean, the reason for using GeoParquet, right, is it's going to be stored in your data lake. So obviously we've still got support in there for well-known text and GeoJSON to be pulled in from your Power BI data set. So that's this option here, well-known text GeoJSON from data. But the problem with that is we've still got that 32,000 character limit that somebody mentioned before. That was you, Anthony. Now, if we start loading in GeoParquet, are we also going to be hit by that 32,000 common character limit? At the moment, probably. And also, Power BI doesn't support any kind of binary file through Power Query either yet. They just don't appear. So we need to understand how that might work. But it is certainly my intention to support it. But we're a little bit reliant on the Power BI infrastructure. If we can't support it natively, then we'll have a look at whether we can do something in a custom fabric workload to translate it on the fly or something like that. I'm sure there's something we can do, but we definitely need support for it.
Amazing, thank you. I've got one question, just a quick one. You've shown how we can connect up to one shapefile. Can we connect up to multiple shapefiles in the same icon map without doing crazy workarounds, or?
Connected to data, probably not multiple shape files without drill down. But you can now also bring in shapefiles as reference layers. So if you want, some static layers on there and then some that are bound to data, then that's doable. If you've got multiple shapefiles, I guess you could combine them into a single shapefile. Or happy to have a discussion later, Alice, trying to understand what you're trying to do and see if we can make that.
Amazing. I just know that lots of people in the environmental applications for maps in Power BI are used to navigating through things like the ArcGIS online maps, where you can toggle on and off lots of different layers, and showing people you can have one layer on, then they suddenly want to have all of their layers on. And we've done a little bit of workarounds with the WKT. It's quite painful. And I was just trying to think whether there could be options. Reference layers could be good. Can you do multiple reference layers, or is it still just maybe one interactive and one reference?
So as an uploaded file, you can only do one. The problem with uploading the shape files is, of course, they bloat your Power BI desktop file. So if you're loading 5 meg files, you're potentially increasing your Power BI desktop file by 25 meg, which you don't want to do. You can switch between different layers using conditional formatting if you host it externally, or rely on well-known text. Or, of course, if they're using ArcGIS, then one of the features I haven't spoken about yet is we do also support ArcGIS Online. So you can then have switches between your multiple ArcGIS layers. At the moment, you can't display more than one, but I'll probably add that in relatively straightforwardly to be able to support multiple ArcGIS layers.
Yeah, amazing. Oh, no, that sounds really good.
And the ArcGIS layers, I mean, obviously the issue you've got in the ArcGIS visual for Power BI is it really doesn't feel like a Power BI visual, and you can't use Power BI conditional formatting to format them, and the join layer doesn't work particularly well. It's a little bit buggy. So if you use the ArcGIS layer in Icon Map Pro, then it feels like a Power BI visual. You've got normal Power BI tooltips. It supports report page tooltips. You can do drill through, all of it. And cross highlighting as well, and conditionally format it within the visual. So it feels more Power BI than it does Esri, but you're pulling in your Esri layers.
Yeah, amazing. That's so good. Thank you.
And then I'm nearly out of time, aren't I? There's just one thing that I wanted to show in here before we move on, is how to create drill down. So if we want to be able to drill down into the next level of detail, simply increase the number of drill down levels, and then we get another little toggle here to load in our second file. So I can pull in the lower super output area level of shapes. This is quite a big file, so it will take just a moment. Paul, I'll get to the legend in a minute. Just seen your question come in. So hopefully once this is processed, what I do need to do actually is pull in the low super output area into here. And then that should turn on the drill down options, and then I should be able to drill down into any of these other local authority areas and get down into that lower level of detail. Show another quick example, drill down into Westminster. So you can see that it's really simple to create multiple levels of drill down choropleth maps now. Right, I'm out of time. Let me just run through some of the other features in some pre-existing examples. All right, for another 5 minutes, Alice?
Yeah, sure. Please continue on.
Cool. So let's start with this one at the top. So ability to draw lines. So this report showing all of the routes of all of the airlines in the world. So I can just pick a random airline and it will show the routes that particular airline flies. Lines in IconMap Pro can either be straight geodesics, so they follow the curvature of the Earth, or curved. And you can format the dash pattern, the width, the color, the transparency, all through conditional formatting. In fact, that applies to polygons as well. Haven't shown images yet. So sticking with aviation theme for a moment. So this report is showing all of the aircraft currently in the sky above my house right now. So this is a live report being fed from Fabric's real-time intelligence workload. So this report gets refreshed every 5 seconds. So hopefully if I don't touch it for a moment, you'll see those planes start to move around. There we go, moved a little bit. So this is showing icons on the map. So we've got different images according to the different types of plane. We're rotating the images around so that they're always pointing in the direction of travel. We can change the size, although I haven't necessarily done that on these. And we're also using well-known text to generate a line string showing their last 30 minutes worth of locations. Also, I've added a label onto there as well. The label support's way better in IconMap Pro. You can say whether you want it above, below, left or right of an item or on top, and the formatting's better too. What else have we got? H3. So I showed H3 earlier where we'd generating it from the longitude and latitude values on the fly in the map. In this example, in fact, let's clear the slicer. You can see that we've got 360 million rows of data. So this is being pre-aggregated. In this case, I'm using KQL database to generate the H3 hexagons. But as I say, you could use QGIS or Databricks' Mosaic to do this. And now I'm displaying 180,000 hexagons based on 360 million rows of data, showing basically where the busy areas of airspace have been from that same flight data over a period of months. So you can see here, you really don't want to live just outside Windsor in the UK because it's on the approach to Heathrow Airport. I've seen some examples in farming, people starting to use IconMap Pro where they're flying drones over a field of crops and measuring the size of those crops and then displaying that as a H3 grid in Power BI to be able to determine when those crops are ready to be picked, for example. Right, what else can we show? Let's give well-known text a little bit of love because that doesn't go away. So the benefit of using well-known text, partly it's really useful, well, not that one, let's come back to that. Well, advantage of using well-known text is obviously if your source data's already got geospatial data in it, in a database. So for example, Snowflake or SQL Server have geospatial data types, then it's a really easy way of getting those shapes into your report. But also if you have like these boundaries that can change over time. So you might want to display a different shape for an area according to what date range of that you're looking at of your data. And you can also show a really, really large number of polygons. So I've loaded in from OpenStreetMap every single building, tree, road, railway line, river, every single type of item that makes up the base maps into my SQL Server database in this case. Actually, it might be Postgres, but either way, it's a database. And loaded those objects into my Power BI dataset. It's using dynamic query, so I can have tens of millions of different polygons in the background. And then everything in color on this map is actually a data-bound, well-known text item in my report, which means as I mouse over, I can use report page tooltips to expose all of the metadata about that particular item. It also means that I can use something like the lasso tool to select an individual set of properties, for example. And in this case, I've joined it to the house price data for the last 30 years. So I can see the individual prices that those individual properties have sold for since, I don't know, 1995, just by selecting those individual properties. Now, everything I've shown so far has been one type of object at a time, but one of the key things about Icon Map and Icon Map Pro is the ability to show more than one type of item at a time on the map. And hopefully this is easier with those split out formatting options. So in this case, I'm showing a choropleth map. Choropleth maps showing different deprivations. So at the moment it's showing income in Yorkshire. I could switch to, I don't know, let's go to Newcastle, northeast England. Currently showing deprivation by income, but I could change that to crime, and you'll see the choropleth map change. And I'm overlaying onto that the locations of dentists, but equally I could change to doctors and GPs, for example, or hospices, whatever it is. This is just circles and choropleth maps, but I could draw lines on here as well, or other polygons if we wanted. A couple more, and then I'll stop for questions. So this is the Canadian city of Victoria, not the Australian one, but the Canadian one. And they've made the network of water mains pipes available as open data. So I've pulled those into my Power BI data model. So I've got in here multiple layers. So at the moment, we're showing all of the water mains flushing zones. Let's turn those off. And also the hydrants as the red circles, but I could switch those out and show, I don't know, actually, let's do the water lateral lines, and then we can also see all of the individual pipes as they go into the individual properties. Or what I haven't shown really in any of these examples yet is interacting with the other visuals on the map, or things like cross highlighting. So this is the same set of water mains, which I can use different sets of conditional formatting. So I can look at it by jurisdiction or by material or by condition. And then I can use these other visuals to say, show me, I don't know, all of the residential pipes in the jurisdiction of Victoria City, made of cast iron, that are over 100 years old. And it's highlighting just those, and then I can, with report page tooltips, mouse over any of those individual pipe segments, and it's showing me, the latest inspection logs and installation dates, and drawing reference numbers, all of that stuff for that individual pipe segment. And then finally, the one that Paul was asking about. Let's do this one. So as yet, I haven't got built-in legends in iComMap Pro, but it is on my backlog of things to do, and splitting out those individual formatting options for the types is one of the things that makes that actually feasible now in the new visual. But we now have the new slicer that arrived in PowerBI recently, which supports conditional formatting. So what I've done here, so this is the borough of Kingston in London and some planning data. And I've used the new PowerBI slicer and conditional formatting to be able to create a simple legend. So if I want to have a look at the green corridors and then I don't know, green built areas, I don't know what green chains are, but let's add those on with some local open spaces and some metropolitan land. Looks like we've got some industrial sites on there, sites with importance for nature, let's add those on, and a waste site. And then, I don't know, maybe we want to see where the shopping centre is with the primary and secondary shopping fronts that you can add on there as well. So it's a really useful little tool for creating a quick legend for your map. So if you apply the same conditional formatting to the map as you apply on the legend, then obviously the two link up nicely, and you get the benefit of using it as a slicer. Okay, so I've gone through all of that at 1,000,000 miles an hour. The only thing I do want to point out is, very quickly, is iComMap Pro's got its own website. And something that was a bit lacking for the old visual was documentation. So I spent a lot of time building quite extensive documentation. It's still a work in progress, but there's a lot in there. So this is currently vector tiles. By the way, something I didn't mention, but as we're here, is if you're using Mapbox and you have tile sets in Mapbox, you can use iComMap Pro's vector tiles for exposing Mapbox tile sets, and it works really nicely. So I've added some guides in here on how to do that. So using the URL from Mapbox Studio inside of iComMap Pro to surface your polygons out of Mapbox. Anyway, I have probably talked enough. Don't think I've got any more slides other than to summarize. So if you want to find out more, please do reach out by email. And of course, the iComMap Pro website's there, so go and have a peruse, and do feel free to download it from AppSource and give it a try. Let me know what you think. If there's anything missing, of course, now it is the focus. Hopefully we'll be able to get through the backlog of new features a lot faster. So keen to find out, if there's anything missing from something use case you want to develop, and please do let me know, and we'll see if we can get that functionality added in and make it usable for you.
Amazing. Thank you so
Thanks very
much,
much.
James. It looks like it really unlocks a lot of those pain points when it comes to mapping in Power BI. So I think definitely watch this space, and I think that that's going to be everyone's new favorite mapping visual for sure. We had a couple of extra questions in the chat. Not sure if we answered this one from Paul. Can we use the H3 index in our data?
So if you're using longitudes and latitudes to generate the H3 hexagons, you can't then get it out of iComMap back into your data. But if you've got the H3 indexes already in your data, then you can use those to generate the hexagons on the map without longitudes and latitudes. So depending which way around your question is, the answer is no or yes. But if you've got an example, Paul, just give me a shout and I can run that through with you. And Patrick's asked, on the free iComMap site, made an example PowerBI files available. So there is one currently on there in AppSource to download with a few examples. It's on the to-do list to then build out for the documentation PowerBI sample files for everything that's in there. They're not there yet, but they're coming. And but I have created quite a lot more videos of walkthroughs of how to do things step by step this time. So hopefully that will help a little bit.
Yeah, amazing. I had a couple of questions. Just one about what will happen to your free icon map. What's your plan for that? Will that continue, or are you thinking of deprecating it?
So not planning on removing it. So it's still there, but probably won't be able to provide any support on it going forwards, and it definitely won't be getting any new features built on it. So I guess it's deprecated, but I'm not removing it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, focusing on the new visual. To be frank, the new visual's built a lot better and in a bit more of a sustainable way to keep it up to date in app source. And the fact that we're already on the third app source release in 2 weeks, shows that hopefully the level of development that we're aiming for.
Oh, definitely. I've just got one more question just around publish to web. A lot of the reports that we make in the environmental industry, people want to make freely available. And I saw on your website that it was a limitation, or you currently discuss with the company. What's the vision there?
Yeah, so we are supporting publish to web, but app source paid for visuals don't support publish to web. If you try and use it, it will say this is an unsupported environment. So basically, you can reach out to us and we'll provide you with a different version of the visual. It's the same code, it's just a switch in there, so it's not using the app source licensing checker. The only complication is pricing, because actually there's now costs for delivering the visual in terms of the background mapping if you're using our map servers. I don't know if you used Mapbox background maps on your publish to web maps. You can find, as I certainly did on the old Icon Map site, when I had on the home screen a map that had Mapbox maps, the costs can start escalating quite rapidly if you have a lot of users.
Yeah.
So the only thing we need to have some idea of is what the expected usage is likely to be, just so we can cover the that usage of the background mapping. Because obviously, if you're using our mapping servers, then you don't need to be paying Mapbox for standard background maps.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, good to know that might be that's supported and there's options there.
Yeah, and same applies to PowerBI embedded as well.
Okay.
So we've got people using with PowerBI embedded, but again, it needs a different version from us.
Yeah. Amazing. Were there any last minute questions? I think we've got 1 more minute left. Amazing. Oh, thank you so much. I'm having a look at my list. I wrote lots of notes, but I think I'll touch base with you later. I might just share screen just to give just a quick heads up about our next session we've got coming up. Our next session, it's on the 9th of July, and it's not Power BI focused, but I think still very interesting for this group. It's by Matthew O'Brien. He's presenting on AI, not Excel. So his experience using ChatGPT for environmental data analysis. So that's happening next month. And we've also got a placeholder for our August session. With myself and Christian presenting on a recent Power BI report, which we developed to have a look at a flood recovery analysis for New South Wales. And the Icon Map free version features quite heavily there. We've used it on lots of our pages of the report. So just a quick reminder that we've recorded this session. If you want to watch a recording, we'll update it on our blog and YouTube channel. If there's anyone in the audience today who wants to share your environmental data analytics story, even if it's not exactly Power BI focused, or if it's the beginner end or the really advanced end of the spectrum, we would love to hear from you. We're always looking for new and interesting presentations. So please reach out to Christian. And thank you so much. Thanks, James, so much for taking the time. I know you must be so busy at the moment, but yeah, we really appreciated that. And I think it was a really interesting run through of all of the different features, and we're very excited to explore it in a lot more detail.
Thank you.
Has anyone tried it? Anyone tried the visual yet on the call? Yeah, a few people thumbs up. Amazing. Well, I can't wait. I think yeah, there's definitely a lot of pain points you touched on there, James, between the Azure map and the ArcGIS map, and yeah, can't wait to see, especially the integration with ArcGIS. That's really exciting.
Yeah, please give it a go and give us some feedback. We'd love to hear what's working. You know, what needs a bit more work, and we can make it better.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. And thank you so much for all your help on the old icon map. I appreciate you must be so busy, and you're always so quick at replying and giving helpful tips and everything. It makes such a difference. Very much appreciate it. So we'd be very happy to support your new map.
You appreciate it. Well, thanks so much for all the support so far, both old and new. It is appreciated. I'll try and answer the questions that are still coming in on the chat.
Pat, you had a question, auto versioning from the service. Is that
yeah, so when you submit a visual into AppSource, so we submitted one a couple of days ago, which is version 1.002, it takes Microsoft a little bit of time to just review it, and then from that date it then takes up to 2 weeks to appear in AppSource and PowerBI itself. So we've added in kind of joined up a couple of the previous questions. So we've tried to make it easier to trial it and try the visual out without, what we didn't realize is to use Microsoft's inbuilt free trial, you have to put credit card details in and essentially buy it, and you get the first month free, which isn't quite the same as a free trial in our view. So what we've done instead is basically, as long as you don't use it for production purposes, you can download the visual from AppSource, and you'll just get that little yellow banner at the top while you're developing. You can just dismiss that now, so it goes completely away for the whole time that you're you know, in that session. It'll come back if you switch between pages, but all of the rest of the time it will be gone. Then it's not in the way, plenty of opportunity to see if it's working for you. But that's not in the version that you currently download in AppSource. We're waiting for that to be released by Microsoft in the next few days. So we determine the version numbers, but Microsoft determine when it gets released, which can take up to a couple of weeks. So hopefully it won't. Hopefully be a few more days, but we'll see. If you want to try out the latest version, though, in the documentation, you can download manually the latest version, and then you need to put Power BI Desktop in developer mode. So if you go to the releases bit in the documentation, there's some instructions that shows you how to do that. So that's probably the best way to trial it at the moment, is to download that new release directly from our website. Yeah, and then, but going forwards, yeah, it automatically, AppSource will automatically keep the visual up to date for you with the latest.
Yeah, amazing. And then if just on licensing, so say if I've only got one license in my company, imagine my company was bigger. If I create and publish the report and I share it with someone else who doesn't have a license in the service, then is it they won't be able to see that visual?
They'll get the yellow banner at the top warning them that it's not licensed, but it will still technically work. They'll just get the warning message at the top. So yeah, so licenses, it follows Microsoft's AppSource model. So everybody, whether they're a report creator or a viewer, is a licensable viewer. So everybody viewing the report needs a license, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it doesn't break the report. They just have to dismiss the license message. But
Yeah.
technically, they should have a license to be compliant.
Definitely. And it did seem very reasonable prices for how much effort and time we spent processing and doing all these crazy workarounds to allow you to connect up to shape files. You're doing all of the simplification and things like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of functionality in there, and of course the background mapping as well. I mean, I appreciate the background mapping is free if you've got the Azure Maps visual, but obviously you're paying for it with ArcGIS non-free version or with Mapbox. So you know it also includes those prices, and I suspect it works out a lot cheaper than paying for background layers from some of the other big providers.
Yeah. So Pat asked the question, the license needs to be allocated at the tenant level per viewer/username.
Yeah, it's not the nicest, but it's obviously not our choice. There's instructions again on the documentation that take you through step by step how to do this, but you assign the licenses in the Office 365 admin portal. So exactly the same way as you'd assign somebody a Power BI license, you assign them a Icon Map Pro license once you've bought it. So it appears in the same list of products alongside Power BI, Office, whatever else it is. And you can assign it to security groups. It doesn't have to be on an individual user by user basis. So it's not quite as painful as it could be.
Yeah, that was good to know. Amazing. I'm very conscious of your time. I think, were there any last minute questions before we jump off? No, well, thank you so much again, James. Really appreciated the walkthrough and very excited to test it out.
Thanks, Alison. Thanks everyone for joining. Really appreciate it. And yeah, reach out with questions, or you know, if you want to work through a use case, anybody this is, then just give me a shout.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Bye.
See ya.